Hello, BookTube, and welcome to this week's Book to Film. And this week is 1924's The Dark Eyes of London by Edgar Wallace, and the 1939 film The Dark Eyes of London with Bela Lugosi. Now, as I say, the Edgar Wallace novel was published in 1924. I've got a few notes here, so bear with me. Edgar Wallace he was born April 1st. Good birthday. Many people share that date. Yes, including myself. April 1st, 1875. But he died in February 10th, 1932. So he was like 50 some years old. And he wrote, I see bandied around numbers, but he wrote a lot. Anywhere from 170 to 100 to 200 novels. And sometimes I think they count in his short story collections as well, and they say over 200 because he wrote about 1,000 short stories, which equates to 40 plus books of short stories. And I don't know how accurate the next statistic is that I'm going to say is that I've heard it said that during the 1920s, one of every four books published in the UK in the 1920s was an Edgar Wallace novel. And he wrote all sorts of, I think, like most of it is crime thriller type material. And he wrote a long series on sort of African novels as well. Now I've been a sort of probably a 45 year, maybe 40 years, I guess. I can't remember which one I first picked up of his, but when I was in Canada and going to book sales, you could find old reprint hardcovers of his at book sales for like a dime a dozen, basically. So I've read quite a few. I've read somewhere 40 to 60 books of his, and some of them I don't even remember the titles. They're fun reading. He what he did was he dictated into he dictated them, and it was recorded on a wax cylinder. Then he had secretaries who typed everything out. And during that process, he would sort of start something, saying something, obviously, but sometimes he never really followed it up with the story. And he usually sort of holed up for a couple days to create a novel this way. And he never really edited and reread. As soon as the manuscript was typed, it went out to the publisher. So there are inconsistencies, let's put it that way, in his novels, but they're just really fun. I find them fun anyway, and interesting. You don't see too much of his books or anything, spoken of today too much, or at least I've never seen it on BookTube, and I did a little search, and I don't really see anything regarding him. This here is done by was published by the House of Stratus. They all have this design on it. They're kind of boring, but yeah, it says on the back here more than 170 books. Well, that's pretty clear. But it's House of Stratos, and this was 2001, done by House Stratus. They've done about 60 or so, I think, of his books in this format. And this one, The Dark Eyes of London, is a police procedural. And Edgar Wallace was sort of a pioneer and maybe one of the first to do police procedurals in the UK, in British crime fiction. And we start out in Paris, and we meet Larry Holt, Inspector Holt, in Paris, and it's a stopover on his way to Monte Carlo for a holiday. He has spent 4 years in Germany, in Berlin, I think it is, working with the police there. And he has a butler, or well, a valet called Sonny. And that's the surname is Sonny. But he's not of a sunny disposition. He's sort of he's a sardonic remarks and things like that. And it's there's a bit of comedy between the two of them, which a bit of banter between, and it's kind of funny. So he's ready to head off to Monte Carlo, but while he's in Paris, he meets um, uh, what is it? Fast Fred, is that his name? Um, Sorry, I just sort of remembered his name. Yeah, Flash Fred, Flash Fred, Fred Grogan, and he's a known criminal in England, and but he's not really going to deal with him much or do anything. And Flash Fred said he's going off somewhere else, and so he's not worrying about it. He's all set to go to Monte Carlo to either hopefully win some money. But he gets a telegram from his friend, who's the commissioner of Scotland Yard, who says that to come back because there's been a murder, a body found, and they want him to investigate it. So he scraps his his holiday, and he goes back to Scotland Yard. And he gets put on a case. There was a body found on the banks of the Thames. A Canadian, rich Canadian sort of industrialist. And there's many oddities about this. He's written with an indelible pencil on his sort of white shirt front, saying his last will and testament to my only daughter, Clarissa. And other things that they find, and they also find a braille piece of a note, but it's been wet and it's not fully decipherable. But they do see murder, and they do see something, dear or something like that. A few words that is a bit of a is unclear. And they find out that he had an insurance policy. So, and they find out that it was, I think, for 2000? I think it was a lot of money, pounds. And they go see a Dr. Judd that's working for the insurance company, and he's paid it out to he said his daughter Clarissa, and and it was done in cash. And Holt's thinking this is a little strange, but in the meantime, he's been given an office of himself at Scotland Yard, and a secretary, Diana Ward. And the commissioner, his friend, says that she's sharp, she's smart, and then he finds out that she's beautiful as well. So there's a bit of a romantic aspect here as well. But we go through, there's other departments that are looking at things. There's the autopsy. There's looking into other aspects of the evidence, what evidence there is. But she they look into his past because they want to find out where his daughter is, this Clarissa. But they wire and send a telegraph to the company who worked for his father. He worked for his father, and immediately came back saying he wasn't married, so therefore he couldn't have had a daughter. Well, married daughter, okay, fine. At that time, if you had children, you were married generally, or at least officially. But then he realizes that it came back too quickly, and so they never really looked into it. It's just the common knowledge of this was that he did not have a child. So they investigate a little more, and they find out that he was married in the UK, and he spent some time in this little town. Like he was in the UK, in Britain, many years previously, and then recently had come back, and he spent a lot of time in this little village. So they find out there's a graveyard with well, his name is Stewart. I probably didn't mention that, but Mrs. Stewart and the child that are buried there, and he set up a gravestone for them. So who's Clarissa? It's not the same child's. It's not the same name. And the secretary, Diana Ward, sort of, she leaps to a conclusion, which proves right. So these are one of the things that are plot problematic in many ways. That there were twins, you know. So they're on the lookout for the twin, and you learn a little bit about her, uh, and that she was sort of orphaned and raised somewhere else, but she is smart, and she says, "Oh, don't look at me, I'm not I'm not the lost heiress, and stuff like this." Uh, Again, that's foreshadowing, and I'm not going to give away too many details. Like, I mean, the solution to this and everything. But anyway, she starts working with him a little bit, even though it's not her job. She's more the secretary and everything. But they find out that there's a group of criminals, because he's been away for a long time. There's a group of criminals called the Dark Eyes of London. What it is there are blind people that commit the crimes, because they can go around in the fog, in the dark. If they know the area, they can get in, get out quickly, and bypass the police because they're fumbling around in the dark. So it's an interesting premise, that the henchmen, but there's somebody obviously behind this, and that's where this is. It's a product of the time for the book, because they're, it's super criminals, sort of a la you know in, Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes, that has a criminal organization, and that was popular all across Europe and England too, and in American pulps and everything too. This was very popular. So we find out, like, as I say, I'm not going to go into too many details here, but there's a house of the blind, that's being run, and it's a front for this, because they are, the henchmen for this. But there's one that sort of left the notes to say that the Stewart was murdered. Uh, and we've got the guy who's running it is a Reverend John Dearborn. Sorry, John Dearborn, yeah, and he writes plays to, and he gets, but they're apparently awful plays, but they keep getting put on by this theater, and the theater is run by this Dr. Judd, and he pays for. You find out that he's bankrolling all this stuff, even though they're horrible plays, and but they think that they're marvelous, or the writer thinks they're marvelous as well. So there's all this going on, and it works out like, well, obviously, like, I'm going to say that it's Dr. Judd and Dearborn are the masterminds for this, but they've got this, special house that was built. They're bumping off people in getting the insurance money. That's what it is from the underwriters. But anyway, they built this house, and it's got a chamber of death in it. It's a thing where water rises, and Holt gets put in, and it all works out in the end, and he gets the girl, and I won't say all the details around that, but I just find it extremely, extremely enjoyable, to read. And there's, having sort of blind people as the henchmen, and doing the dirty work, the grunt work, is, I think, kind of interesting. and I love the sort of color that's in it too, because there's things like there's a saying that is in here, that he's Holt, the Inspector Holt, is talking about the dead guy, Stewart, and he's saying that he wouldn't tell his father, probably, that this is the information he gets from the priest that married them, that he was afraid to tell his father that he was married, because and then Holt says, well, yeah, because he'd kick up a shine. And it's a weird, like, there's a lot of sort of slang like this, but it's not 1920s slang. Kick up a shine is a mid-Victorian slang, just mainly just kick up a fuss, you know. And there's lots of little things like that, lots of little color that's in here, that is really, really, really neat, that I enjoy. And the aspect of like the inconsistencies are fine. You just sort of overlook those in Edgar Wallace books. But anyway, we then go to 1939, and we get the film directed by Walter Summers. He was a director, shortly after this, he sort of stopped directing, but he directed a lot of stuff. And I have something in a BFI put out. It's a documentary type thing called The Battle of Colonel and Falkland Islands, First World War, done in the 20s, which is pretty good. But here's the Blu-ray release, and there's the case itself, and this was the slip cover that went over it, and the back of it there, and that was used for especially the American. It was called The Human Monster when it was released a year later, 1940, by Monogram Pictures. And this has a audio commentary with Kim Newman and Stephen Jones, which is pretty good. There's a half an hour discussion between those two, videoed, talking about Bela Lugosi in Britain, the 4 films I think that he made or 3 films that he made in the UK. 3 films, I guess it was, yeah. What is it? Some the Celeste, the Mary Celeste. But then it was cut up and like 20 or 30 minutes taken out and repackaged for the US, called Phantom Ship. And then his last film that was here, because he came back in the early 50s, he toured the provinces, sort of like outside of London, with the 1920s Dracula, a play by Dearborn, and that Bela Lugosi actually was in. He was in the American version of that. So that became a bit popular, but it never got on it never got into the West End in London. But at the same time, they made his last film that was here, and it's the last of a series of Old Mother Riley series. They're very weird films. Most North American audiences have not seen them. It's basically an English guy dressing up as a woman, as an Irish old woman, a washerwoman, and all sorts of weird things. And the actor's wife plays his daughter. It's basically, reprised with Mother Brown's Boys, if that's what it's called. I think it was with the BBC. But anyway, that's getting sidetracked. But yeah, so those were the films, and this one here was filmed in Welland Garden City at the studios there, and it was done over basically a 10 or 11 day period. And it was the script. It was based on the book written by blimey, I sort of forgotten that now. Should say, yeah, screenplay by Patrick Kerwin and Walter Summers, and J.F. Argyle, and it was John Argyle is the sort of production. It was an independent company that did this. Now, they took many liberties with the script. They changed this drastically. It's a very short film. It's an hour and 16 minutes long and a few seconds. It starts out with a different murder, or at least a body, and it looks like somebody called Ingle. And the commissioner has everybody, like a whole bunch of inspectors in his office, dressing them down because they haven't, they haven't solved this case. And Holt, instead of being the sort of star inspector, he's sort of a disgraced detective in some ways. His commissioner doesn't think highly of him anyway. And that he's played by Hugh Williams. That's right, yeah, Hugh Williams, who plays the uncle, and later in one of his, I'm not sure if it's one of his last films, but it could be in Holly and the Ivy, one of my favorite Christmas films. But he has no butler, so there's no Sonny in there. So there's no sort of comedy between. Oh yeah, I just want to refer back to the book. Like, one of the comedy aspects in there was that he says to Sonny, he says, "Oh, that I could have broken my back there, and what would you have done, Sonny?" And he goes, "I would have canceled the papers, sir." And then when he's almost dies again, all he's thinking about is, oh, he wonders if his butler Sonny or his valet will be able to cancel the papers in time, and then he sort of says that to him, and he goes, well, if I didn't, I would just send them back and get a refund. Anyway, so yeah, so he's there doing this, and the Flash Fred, not called Flash Fred, is just Grogan, is being extradited back from the U.S. and being accompanied by an American detective from Chicago, and he's the character is a forger, and he has to go meet Flash Fred, or Fred Grogan, and the American cop that comes in from the States, at the train station. So he does, and he literally bumps into a blonde woman who turns out to be Diane Stewart in here rather than Diane Ward in the book. And she is the daughter of Stewart. No one right at the beginning is the daughter of Stewart, who gets killed, who's the next victim. So we have a completely different dynamic here. So the comedy part, like his partner in a sense, is now this O'Reilly from played by Edmund Ryan, who's been in a lot of films. If you watch classic films, you'll recognize him, and he is a good actor. And Greta Gint plays Diana Stewart. But yeah, so he takes the place of sort of Diana Stewart, but also the comedy relief from his with his valet. Now, the other changes are too. The Bela Lugosi plays the Dr. Judd character in. Yeah, I probably didn't mention his name, but the Dr. Judd character in the book, but now he's named Dr. Orloff. But he's got a dual role as well. But anyway, he's kind of a weird character. And he is a foreign character, so he's got a language, and there's a funny scene because he's telling, when Lieutenant Holt and O'Reilly show up there, and so the O'Reilly's talking obviously an American accent, and Bela Lugosi's character, Dr. Orloff, says, "Oh, you're a foreigner," and he goes, "No, I'm American." But, obviously he's a foreigner as well, asking them if he's a foreigner. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so it goes through that, like he's obviously the, well, he's a doctor, but he's been sort of stricken off in many ways. But his philanthropical place is the Blind Asylum, where a Dearborn, Reverend Dearborn, works. So he tells, Stewart to, go there. Like he loans him some money, and Stewart, he tells him to go there for philanthropical purposes. So he does, and that's where he gets murdered. That's where they murder the victims. There's no sort of death chamber in the doctor's house. It's upstairs into the hospital area where there's a big metal tank that gets filled up with water, and they drown him and then dump him out into the Thames. And they use the main one character, Jake, the guy that's the big guy that's in the book as well. And it's kind of funny because he's a very tall guy. Is basically was a Shakespearean actor, I believe, called Wilfred Walter, and they just have him, in a suit coat sort of, but underneath his shirt, it's all pushed out like this, like with a pillow, and same on the arms and on his back. It looks kind of odd and funny, and he's got these long teeth that are overhanging over his bottom lip, and he looks quite grotesque. That's him there, and that's Diane Stewart there, but she never wears a slinky dress like that. She's actually smiling, it looks like, at him. But yeah, and it's using, obviously, as the front, and it's the place where to kill the people, and they've been doing this for quite a while, getting the the insurance money for these people, paying it off to bogus people themselves, basically, or to himself. And yeah, and it's like I say, it's very different. So and then Diane Stewart wants to find out who had murdered her father, and so she goes to work for this Dearborn. And it's like, I'm going to give you spoilers here for the film, and there's, with this set, there's some nice cards with this as well. So there we got some movie posters, which are quite nice, different languages. However, and on the back of them, they've got this. That's Diane Ward there, and that's Jake. You can see the shirt sort of puffed out there, and this is oh, he played the both parts. I guess, yeah. I didn't actually realize that he played Stewart as well. And so there's two of them, and Hugh Williams as Lieutenant Holt, and then you got Bela Lugosi as the evil Dr. Orloff, but also in disguise as the blind Dearborn, because you never see them together. And he wears dark glasses. He's got this sort of gray wig and a mustache, but they dubbed his voice. They dubbed his voice to someone else, and when you look at it, you could tell it's him. But it's interesting. And the other interesting things, like, it is a low budget film, like I say, filmed in 11 days, but it is still very fun to watch, and the sets are quite amazing, especially the place where the asylum, the blind home is, and even the street scenes that are going to be stock footage, but they're really good, and the apartment scenes, and it's a really good restoration. I'd only seen this as The Human Monster, and I saw it on TV, I'm sure, at some point, and then I had a big box set of DVDs of horror films, and it was like the TV cut up version of it, and it was really dark. You couldn't see anything. In this Blu-ray, you see a lot of the background, which is just fabulous. You get to see the sets, and it's really well done, and it is made from it is restored from the original negative as well, which is good. And as well with this, there's a little booklet with a little essay written by Dr. Adrian Smith. Um, yeah, it's a fun film. It's nothing, fantastic, but it clicks along like at a hefty pace, and Bela Lugosi's acting is pretty good. Like Bela Lugosi as he's Dr. Orloff, but as the Dearborn, you can see the difference in the way he's acting and moving. So, it's a clear example of how Bela can actually act. And he was actually treated well here. He actually got top billing for this. He got paid more than he ever did at Universal, and he's in almost a lot of the scenes because he's playing the two different characters. And it was when it was put out, it got an H censor rating, which is horrific for public exhibition, and you see that at the beginning of the film that it's H rating, and it was later changed in the 50s, I think it was, or maybe the 60s, to X rating in the UK here, but. Yeah, and it's just saying here the Bela Lugosi in Britain, Kim Newman and Stephen Jones discussed Lugosi's work in the UK at the Edgar Wallace pub in London. See, I didn't know there was an Edgar Wallace pub in London. Be neat to go see that. But yeah, no, it's if you're interested in Bela Lugosi, or checking out the writing of Edgar Wallace, I'm sure you can find a book, and they're just fun. They're fun reads. They're quick reads, and they're easy, and they're just fun. And I really like them, and I've always liked them. And I definitely want to read more. And I got this because I picked this up at a charity shop quite a while ago, many years ago, because anytime I saw Edgar Wallace, I'd pick it up. And I just never got around to reading it. And then I saw this was coming out, and I didn't actually quite realize that this was the human monster, the same film at the time. But I knew it was, this year, so that's why I bought this when it came out earlier this. No, I guess it was last year, or maybe it was no. Yeah, I think it was late 2021 that this came out. But anyway, yeah, if you're interested in sort of police procedurals, and this is really neat too because they show all the other different part departments in Scotland Yard, the people that are the morgue, but also the people looking at photographs, and they're and analyzing fingerprints. They're analyzing the braille piece of paper, on all these different departments that he goes around to see. But as I say, it's a huge departure from the film, because there are two characters in the film that are brothers, and in this one, in the film, it's just the one character doing it all. So, and there's lots of suspension of disbelief in this, and in the book as well. And as I say, it should be easy to find if anybody's interested in it. And if you have any questions, please do sound out in the comments, or send me send me an email. All the details will be down in the bottom. And until next week, BookTube, take care.